I'm going to do a little introduction so that you all know who these panelists are in case they are new to you. Maybe you know, but here we go. We have Jerry here. Jerry, this is a little recap of who Jerry is, just what he wrote, and I sort of, shortened a bit. Jerry has a bachelor's in geology. He worked for several small oil companies as an exploration manager, owned a wholesale auto parts distribution company, took several courses at Regent College on developing a holistic worldview of work, creation, and faith. Jerry is also the current chair of our board here at The Place and has been attending The Place for 2.5 years. Yep, 2.5 years. Wonderful. Thank you, Jerry, for being here. And then we have Tabea. Tabea has her bachelor's in English literature as well as her MBA. She co-founded a social enterprise as well as ran her own side gig business. You can maybe tell us what that is another time. All right. She was an executive in a national publishing company and has consulted and done training workshops for business, government, and not-for-profit organizations. Currently, Tabea has been teaching post-secondary business courses for the past 16 plus years. So thank you, Tabea, for being with us. Oh, and she has also attended the church for 3.5 years. Wonderful. So there's Tabea. Yeah, give her a little. And then last but not least, we have Ryan. Did you say clown? McLeod. Oh, okay, McLeod. Yes, that's his. Imagine. Ryan has a bachelor's in general studies focused around theology and social sciences. Ryan has a lifelong journey in and around the church, this church in particular, and he is married to Cindy, father of 2 children, Claire, who's 15, Finn, 13, and both Cindy and Ryan started Citizen Design Build in 2011 and have been designing and building and learning ever since. So thank you, Ryan, for joining us here on the panel. Alrighty, so we are going to start off our panel with a definition of what capitalism is. And I'm just going to read it off to all of you, and then we'll leave it there so we can ponder it. Okay, I'm going to read it from here. Capitalism, an economic system characterized by private ownership of the means of production, where goods and services are distributed through markets and individuals and businesses are driven by the pursuit of profit. It's a system where private actors own and control property and demand and supply freely set prices. Key features include private property, self-interest, competition, a market mechanism, freedom of choice, and a limited role of government. Alrighty, so our first question on the panel is, how do you respond to this? Jerry, you're up first.
Well, I have to learn how to turn on the microphone. Anyway, I got a little bit ambushed this morning, especially after Pamela read her scripture reading. I wish I would have known that ahead of time, because when you read that, and if you just take a look at that just as, exactly what it says, there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't feel so good. And for me, I haven't taken a bunch of economics courses or anything like that. So I look at that and I see a lot of me stuff, like profit, which I don't think is wrong. And having worked in the oil industry, you guys can just assume what you would like about what I think about economics, which is great because some of you are going to think the same way I think and some of you aren't. Anyway, my first reaction to that is it's coming from the wrong perspective. But it's kind of a little bit messy because we all live under that kind of system that has provided each and every one of us some sort of security, some sort of wealth. And as much as I hate to admit it, we might be all capitalists in some way. I mean, if you have ever worked in your life, and contributed to CPP, you are a capitalist because CPP invests in corporations, so therefore you have capital. So from that perspective, what do I think of it? It's a really mixed bag. Do I think it's good? Do I think it's bad? Yes to both of them. So that's what I'm going to leave it at.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, Jerry.
Okay, I deliberately did not do a lot of prep because I don't want to have my instructor hat on. Because I teach, just for background, I teach a course called Business and Society alongside other business courses where we explore the good, the bad, and ugly of capitalism. I work with largely entrepreneurial students who come in with maybe a bona fide interest or experience with entrepreneurship or a curiosity about it. And very often they come in with the sense that capitalism is a dirty word. And that's what they're going to get in the course. Or they're going to get the complete opposite of that. So as I read that definition, as Jerry has already said, there's a lot baked into that. What I notice about it is already biased that capitalism is bad. And what I would suggest is, well, is capitalism good? Yes. Is it bad? Yes. Because it depends on how somebody engages in that system, whether as a owner of the resources who has the ability to use and deploy them, or those who are responders to what gets put into the marketplace. So there's a lot inherent in that. Private ownership, means of production, which basically means do you have land, human resources, money, knowledge, ability. Goods and services are distributed through markets, so there's a supply side, but there's also a demand side where private actors own and control property, yes. There's the demand side as well, yes, freely set prices. However, maybe self-interest, maybe preoccupied with competition or not, and maybe freedom of choice. Because I think depending on, in some cases, the context you were born into or your life experiences, you have more or less freedom or privilege to participate in that system equally. But I see lots of great things about capitalism alongside its challenges.
Thank you. So I think you can get really esoteric about these kinds of words, and I think we could sit here till 3 o'clock this afternoon and talk about the definition and idea around capitalism versus socialism and other concepts. I think it's a more helpful, valuable place and more practical for us to think about how that's deployed by the average human being the people in this room. So I think capitalism is a tool. And the first thing that comes to mind to me is, maybe I'll use the example of a doctor. Jeff, you can think about this as someone that's about to use a knife. A knife is a tool. And as a surgeon, or someone that's going to cut an animal or a person open, you need to have a system that works. So you need a tool that's sharp. It doesn't actually matter how good Jeff is at making a cut. If he's got a rusty old stone of a knife, it's not going to work very well. But assuming that you have a sharp instrument and there is some value in that instrument, a highly trained surgeon can use that instrument for healing. That same surgeon with the wrong intentions could use that instrument to kill someone. Could do a vile, disastrous kind of tragedy event with that same instrument. That's how I think about capitalism. I think it's about some time spent on discerning what is the tool, what parts of that are not helpful, what parts are helpful. But I think the vast majority of this conversation is spent in here and with where our values and our intentions lay. And I think, again, a poor tool in the hands of a really gifted, well-intentioned person can still accomplish really great things. But the other way around is rarely true. So that's where I would put that. The other thing just kind of that I would add is, not my words, but there's this great document that comes out of the Honoring Our Ways Advisory Group, which is this indigenous group out of Haida. And Cindy and I do a lot of work within First Nations communities now in our business. And there's this great document called Honoring Our Ways. It's a focus on community-led Indigenous comprehensive planning for people groups, and particularly smaller communities. And there's Indigenous principles here that are listed, and each one of these you could spend a day just discussing, but these principles are all is sacred, sustainable development, seventh generation thinking, reciprocity, mutual dependence, interconnection, right relations, intergenerational knowledge, equitable distribution of wealth, and responsibility and respect. So those are some of the places that myself, as I'm looking for wisdom beyond just this human kind of frame, that I'm starting to lean into to find that alignment and discernment and values that I'm holding to myself. Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan. Alrighty. So our next question is, very simply put, what is our role and why? Who would like to go first? Okay, Jerry.
Okay, so it's really interesting how people get to pick to go first. They both looked at me and said, "You go first." And part of it is because I have a very strong neck. It's been hit a lot of times and it hasn't really sunk in. Part of it is because I'm older, and if they sacrifice me, then the other guys could kind of walk away, so it's okay. One of the things that for me, and just drawing from some of my experience, and I'm old enough to be able to change my mind and feel good about it, which is really good, is that, I think of the church and the history of the church and where what does it say about all these things? What does our theology say? Where does it come from a little bit? And I just go back to Genesis, and in Genesis it talked about our first mandate, right, was to fill the earth, occupy the earth. And part of that means that we need to, we build families, we build cities, we build laws, we build governments, we do all sorts of things. And God gave us the creativity to do that. And so we go along and we start to put some of these things into perspective. And as I see capitalism, some of the words in capitalism, it's a system. It was an economic system. And what I have to do is hold that system up to what does God say about building these communities. The other part that of our first mandate was to steward the earth. Now, everything within the earth was given to us for our benefit, for everybody's benefit, not just for me. Yeah, it provides me food, but it also gives me the responsibility to provide for others also. So I kind of try and hold that in balance. I hold that thought in balance. And one of the things that I think we forget a lot is that it isn't just a thought. When God created, in my mind anyway, and I think I'm interpreting it fairly correctly, but I could be wrong, He created out of nothing, ex nihilo. He created all sorts of things out of nothing. But when it came to creating man, He created him out of the dirt. He created him out of creation. So that creation, that dirt, does not belong to me, it belongs to all of us. And so if I use that dirt for production or for anything, I have to keep in the back of my mind that that's a shared thing. It can't be just for my good, for my wealth. It has to be for the betterment and the wealth of the entire society. So that's kind of what I keep in the back of my mind as I do business, or used to do business. I can give you a really good example of that. During the 90s, the oil patch was going through incredible turmoil. I mean, I think we went through four downturns. And in one of the downturns, I had about 6 geologists and 3 geophysicists working with me. And all we had to do was take a 10% salary cut, and we could keep everybody on board. But no, that can't happen. We had to lay most of the people off so that the wealthier could get wealthy and the poorer guys got poorer. And that's just the way it was. So those are the kinds of things that I've experienced. Those are the kinds of things that kind of put And the problem is, well, I was the manager, so I had to lay him off because the boss said I had to lay him off because we had to answer to our shareholders. And the shareholders expected a return. Anyway, that's a little bit of a personal story, a little bit of a personal thing, but that's the way I look at this whole thing. That's the way I look at my values and how it fits into the picture of whether I use this tool and how I use the tool.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess the way I want to start this is to recognize this is really fraught. And we all, I think everybody in this room, because you do have the privilege and ability to come and be in this room, we then have responsibility, and we are engaged in the system. We're participating in it. And I don't think it's healthy to take a firm stance and tell anybody what they ought to do or think, and myself including as an educator, I don't tell my students what to think. I put things in front of them and invite them to form their own opinions. So whether it's the Bible or Indigenous principles or I think it's Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, right? We could call it stewardship, we could call it relationality or reciprocity, all my relations, right? In terms of indigeneity, in terms of how we treat people and animals and the non-living world. And inherent in this system, if you have resources, whether it's money or stuff, you have power. We have power as business owners and managers, potentially, in how we treat our employees, the kinds of products we produce, how we price those products, the supplier relationships that we engage in, and how we conduct ourselves with our consumers to not rip them off, give them a fair price. We can make choices to be sustainable, but we also are on the demand side of the capitalism equation, even if none of us are involved in a power position in a company. And again, different of us have different amounts of power to make those free market choices. If you're on a really tight budget, you might not have the privilege of being able to think about how is the way I'm spending my money contributing to the system in a way that aligns with my values, in terms of how much I consume, who I'm supporting, am I doing research to understand the values that are laden in this particular company that I support, those decisions in terms of buying local or not, or their hiring practices or their labor practices or whatever it is. So I think sometimes we forget that we actually have a lot of power. Do I need that extra pair of shoes? I like shoes, I buy shoes. There's no shame in that. The other thing I would say, and this is what I position to my students, because they'll come in and they'll feel ashamed that they want to start a business. But almost all of the students I'm working with are purpose-driven already. We don't have to sell this thought to them. And so what I say to them is, if you want to have a purpose-driven enterprise, you do not have to do it as a not-for-profit. You can have a for-profit business, because if you have the knowledge, the skills, the wherewithal to be good at solving economic and social and environmental problems that people are willing to pay you for, and you're good at that, and you can make money, then you've got more power to distribute that money for good. Whereas somebody who doesn't have those skills maybe doesn't have that opportunity. So those are some of the things that I think about with respect to, like, I guess, responsibility.
Thanks, Tobias.
Thanks. All of those things, those are great. I would just pick up and carry on with this concept of personal responsibility, and I'll just speak for myself, so maybe I can just give a couple of examples. For me, and I think, like you said, everyone's coming from a different perspective and also from a different place with different levels of luckiness or privilege when it comes to how much money you may have, the social, cultural conditions, sometimes just the color of your skin changes the way that you entered into the world and the things that were made available to you. And those are different for every person. So this is a very personal thing. And I say that really carefully because it's really easy to forget the entitlement and the perspective and the place you are. And you start getting kind of pretty shitty judgy with other people without realizing it. So I just want to call that out there. That's a real danger in this whole kind of water. Some things for me is I want to try to focus my efforts around trying to be one of service, to be grounded in values. And within this idea of using capitalism or business ownership as a tool, I think starting from a place of having a vision and having values that you're going to hold to is a really good place. And if you can put some of that responsibility in some other people's hands in the form of maybe an advisory council, or that could be a beer around a table once a month with 3 of your friends that are willing to ask you hard questions about your business, that's a really great idea. Being in a place where you're the boss and you get to make all the decisions, even if it's something relatively small, like the business that Cindy and I run. We have 41 employees, and no one's looking over my shoulder when I make a decision as to whether it's a good one or not. I just get to make it. That's actually a really dangerous place to be. So if you can get some other people there that love you enough and that you trust enough that they can ask you difficult questions and really push on you, I think that's a great idea. That coupled with like a vision statement, like for us, our vision statement is using construction as a mechanism for transformational change. Our values are care, culture, quality, and cause, and we have some stuff in and around those 4 things that drive our company. We still make lots of stupid mistakes and dumb decisions, but we usually are able to differentiate the decisions we made and where they stopped aligning with those 4 values. So I think those things are great. I do think it's really important that in our businesses that we ask more of our businesses, we ask more of them. It's not good enough for businesses to just make money. It's really shallow and hollow as a business owner. We call it I have a dog named Rosie, so we call it the Rosie principle. Return on social impact is we're looking to try to run a business that is also financially successful and has a return on some kind of significant social impact that gives the reciprocal kind of feedback that we're looking for to say that our business matters. If it didn't exist, it's not just money, like less money is made, it means some significant outpouring stops. And I think those are some places for us. We don't do it perfect, and we make a lot of mistakes. But it's easier for us to get our heart in the right place if we have that vision statement, some values, and some people that we put in place to check us. Super helpful.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you to all of you. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left. We're going to do some questions for the panelists. I am going to get up and get into the crowd, get in with the people. So if anyone would like to ask a question, I will come up to you and hand you the mic. Does anyone have some burning questions for these 3, or a comment even, just a, yeah.
I'll stand. My name's Vlasta. I have 3 businesses with my husband. He's a talented chocolatier. But I don't want to talk about that. I appreciate the panel and all the things, but I want to talk about my background. My name's Vlasta. You mentioned, a different color, but I have a different name. I've been in Victoria since I was knee-high, and it's actually coming up to 50 years in next week that my mom brought us here. From Czechoslovakia, from Czech Republic, which used to be Czechoslovakia. When I was 18, I went there for the first time. My brother and I went to go visit, actually my father and some family. And I'll never forget that moment, crossing across the border. It had been just 6 months prior to that Gorbachev and Reagan had their talks, and basically the wall had fallen. I like sharing this story because I think it's important to, and I think it's sort of on track of what we're talking about here. Like, I call myself a capitalist, and the reason I do is because I witnessed with my eyes, and yes, I was 18, but I had already, seen the world. I'd traveled a little bit, and I saw with my own eyes a really, really oppressed people when I landed in Czechoslovakia at 6 months after the wall had fallen. I saw people that had, they didn't have freedom. They didn't have freedom of enterprise. They didn't have, they were, if you were not such and such, you were, you couldn't, have that job, or you couldn't even go to university. My mom wanted to go to university. She couldn't go to university if she had stuck around. My grandfather, as soon as he got off the train in Switzerland, when they left, he's like, I'm never going back there again, type thing. So, and I guess for me, I see the opposite of capitalism as socialism, and I say this carefully because there are, I'm rambling now. Because this is stepping into communism a bit too, and I don't really want to talk about that, but it's just that free enterprise, and I'm not afraid of competition when there's good checks and balances, and I think that's where our government's really important, and good leadership, making good decisions, like good policies around all those big things in banking and blah blah blah. Thankfully, I think Canada's a bit better off in that world than the huge population of the U.S. and some other things. But what do I want to say? But anyways, I just want to say that with my own eyes, I did see people that, and a country that was like dripping with oppression, and there was just this like hopelessness, and I could see it. And then 10 years later, we went back, completely lovely country. And not that it wasn't lovely, there were some really beautiful things about it. There's some, and beautiful people, but you could definitely sense and see the grayness, like, yeah. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you. Is there another question? Oh, yes.
My wife's not in the room, so I can ask a question without it being awkward. Okay, thank you, Vlasta, for sharing that. So I think I have this idea in my head that because of it being a tool that could be used well or used poorly, the human element is very important in any system. I've been thinking about democratic systems as well, or government systems as well. Obviously, democracy works best when you have people in place to make the right decisions. And maybe capitalism is better because there's more chance of the right people being able to make good moves and all of that. So we've been talking about small business or independently owned business, and I just wonder about corporations or even publicly traded corporations. And I wonder, maybe the panelists' thoughts, or maybe not. When that human element is somewhat removed into a crowd of nameless shareholders, you can still have maybe corporate vision and all that, but maybe on some level, everything is reduced to the profit aspect. And so should we as consumers maybe make a distinction between patronizing corporations over independent businesses? And I don't think that's probably a 100% choice to make, and sometimes you can't make that choice, but I do wonder maybe about, does capitalism do best without those publicly traded companies, but then capitalism also lends itself to the conglomeration and the embiggening and all of that for efficiency, et cetera. So I wonder, I don't know, Jerry might have thoughts, or maybe any of the panelists, or anyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
I do have some thoughts, because I just finished reading part of Carney's book, Values, Building a Better Society for All. And part of that book was a really interesting conversation for me as I was reading the book, because he was meeting actually at the Vatican with a bunch of corporations to try and figure out how to put the right, whether it's laws or judicial, judicial laws around what corporations do and how to transform those corporations into being good for all. And I think it was really interesting because he says the Pope actually surprised them. And he walked into the meeting and he told this story. And I love stories because it kind of helps me understand. And he said, our meal will be accompanied by wine. Now, wine is many things. It has bouquet, color, richness of taste, and it all complements the food. It has alcohol that enlivens the mind. Wine enriches all of our senses. At the end of our feast, we're going to have grappa. Grappa is one thing, alcohol. Grappa is wine distilled. And then he continues and he goes, humanity is many things. Passionate, curious, rational, altruistic, creative, self-interested. But the market is one thing, self-interested. The market is humanity distilled. And then he said, our job is to turn grappa back into wine, to turn the market back to humanity. This isn't theology, it's reality. And I think that's what we're talking about here is capitalism is not a bad thing, but capitalism in its very essence, without any controls, any of that, is. And that's what he's trying to say is you have to put something around that. You have to bring laws. You have to bring values into the system somehow. And, you know, one of the things that I didn't even know about this, they're called B corporations. It just came up a week ago. Doug kind of mentioned it to me. It's corporations that decide to put those values into what they do. And you know, there are countless people, like, I mean, you're doing it, that are doing these things, except for we don't hear about them as much. You know, I was just doing some reading. There's only about 9,700 B corporations in the world. There's millions of corporations. So, but the seed is there, and that's what makes a difference. I think we need to start making that difference. We need to start saying no. We need to be different, and I think that's the only way we can change it.
So one thing that I hope will bring hope to people is that, at least in the education space, capitalism is being reframed big time. Probably for sure the last 5 years in earnest, and it's even longer than that. So I'll just give you a couple terms that you can look up and do more digging into if you want to. One is conscious capitalism, and the other is stakeholder capitalism. I will also say that there has been a lot of research to show what is the trajectory for corporations that do espouse what we would say are good values with respect to how you treat people and how you treat the environment. And there's lots of data that shows, and some of it over a 10-year span, that shows that corporations who espouse these values and these practices also do better financially. And part of that is that now there's a significant groundswell in what's called impact investing. So angel investors, VCs, this is too much of a generalization, but have very much developed a conscience around wanting to invest from a values-based perspective. So doing in their due diligence, looking very closely at corporations and how they're espousing, but also reporting on and showing data and metrics on those values. We know that good treating your employees well, reduce costs in terms of turnover and all of the expenses that come with finding and retaining employees. More and more customers, especially the next generation, are demanding that companies are responsible. So whether they buy into it actually from a values-based perspective or not, it's just good strategy to operate this way. And there are large corporations that are living this out. I think it's challenging. It's more challenging as an organization gets larger, because decision-making is decentralized and all kinds of reasons for that, but it's in the water.
Yes and yes. Those are great insights. I might have a couple of little things to add, but that was wonderful. A couple of things come to mind. Number one, we all have some measured ability for change. And so just like I mentioned earlier, that's going to be different for each one of you. A really wise man told me once that it's really important to keep your circle of influence and your circle of concern similar in size. And I think I have repeated that statement to more people than almost anything else. Is like, if you look into the vortex of capitalism and for-profit business and you find yourself losing hope, your circle of concern is getting too large. So I would just, it doesn't mean you forget that or put on the blinders. It's like, shrink that down and look for something that you can engage with. I think that's really important. There is places that you can invest your money that there's more conscious effort put into that, what that money is doing. There's things that we can purchase and not purchase that is going to have a profound effect when there's 7 to 8 billion of us making those decisions. So those are, I think it's really important to do that. I often find myself, as I delve into all of the big picture thinking, that I start losing my frame of reference because it's so overwhelming. There's so much information. So when you find yourself doing that, where you're just like ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think it's really helpful, even just in the moment, to try to shrink that down and say, on a grassroots level, what can I do right now? What could I purchase that would be different? What could I live without, or what could I save up for that's slightly more quality, that might have more reciprocity, or there might have some more durability, there might be a component to that brings more value than just the need I need today. I think that's a really helpful way to move through the world. The other thing in our business and just in myself personally is I came across this silly, simple little statement. It's just, what if I redefine success for me as helping the people around me succeed? Could that be my success story? And I think that's an interesting idea, is it's so easy for us to just get wrapped up in whatever's going on in this. And for us to try to turn our view in those moments outward, just to the people around you, to say, like, it's so helpful to just focus on an other for a certain period of time to just get you out of this kerfuffle. Because it gets pretty heavy in here. And I think there's lots of healing work. There's so much woundedness and repair that I'm personally in the process of this lifelong kind of healing journey of mine. But that's like super overwhelming and really tiring sometimes. And it's really surprising if you take your focus from the internal and put it outwards every once in a while to just the people that are within reach that you could help. And I think if everybody did that, goodness, we would see a change, and we have. So.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all. Yep.